Hi, I'm Robin.
I'm Kate.
Talk fast, eat ass. This is part four. I think we're on the 13th day of the war. March 7th? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
March 7th.
Today is March 8th. It's International Women's Day
Say March 8th? Oh, doesn't it?
tomorrow.
Okay.
And I think from all women of Ukraine, I request not flowers, but some dead Russians. Potentially the end of the war.
That'd be nice. Yeah, there was
They
a...
can also just give you one Bayraktar or one
What? Oh, Beirut.
NLAW. Yeah, just.
What was it? I think it was like over this weekend. It was supposed to be like a religious day of forgiveness or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
like
yeah.
Zelensky's whole thing was like, we will never fucking forgive you. Like, yeah, fuck them. Why should we forgive anybody?
I agree.
Okay, so since the last video, I think there have been three rounds of peace talks. The first one was just establishing the ground. Nothing happened with it. The second one, which happened on March 3rd.
I gotta say that every time during the peace talk, people were kind of hoping for quiet hours. So like at least
A
during the peace
ceasefire.
talk, yeah. But apparently, so I'm gonna say something wrong right now. But there was a general. I think he was from Chechnya during one of the wars between Russia and Chechnya, and he actually said that like every time Russia does peace talks, it's just them trying to win some time to regroup and find a new way to attack. So
Yeah. So the second round peace talks was on March 3rd, and like the thing that they established was green corridors for like Mariupol and Kyiv and I
I
think
think also
Kharkiv
Kherson,
and Kherson,
but I might be wrong about
and they
Kherson.
were violated almost immediately.
Oh, also in what was it? Irpin.
European.
It's by Kiev, and the town is so.
Oh yeah, Kate's Ukrainian.
So Irpin is like I think you could call it like a suburb, just because buying apartments is so expensive in Lviv. Oh my god, in Kiev. So many people live in Irpin, but every day they commute to Kiev to
Gotcha.
work, and so they essentially destroyed the town, and they destroyed the bridge that would be used to connect Irpin to Kiev. And when they were trying to evacuate people, they opened fire again.
hmm
So
I think a little bit closer just to make sure we're still in the range of the microphone.
okay.
Um, yeah, so they very clearly like violated the green corridor things, but one of the things that's really pissing me off is how much of like, oh, but Russia's also saying that Ukraine violated it. And like,
I think Russia can say whatever they want,
but like
but
literally
by
their entire
now,
strategy is just like say they say they did it.
yeah. So first of all, during like for people who are like not aware of the situation, the war has actually been going like for 8 years. Like when Robin woke me up on the day of the attack and said
24th, yeah.
when the war started, I wanted like to be a smart ass and be like, yeah, 8 years ago. But the entire strategy Russia was using is that like it's Ukraine to blame. Ukraine is shooting their own people. Ukraine is, and so they're trying to do this again. But the difference is it's a very different scale, and every step, everything that happens in Ukraine is so well documented by Ukrainian side, by third parties, by journalists. There is everybody has a phone and like like so at this point Russia can say whatever the fuck they want.
But the
But
crazy thing is like part of their
everything is documented.
how much of their strategy also still depends on them like trying to push their narrative into everybody's face like front like it's like one kid saying like Billy stole my scissors, and then other kid running up is like, no, these are actually my scissors. He was stealing them. He was pretending, like getting in their face, trying to like convince you that is their lie is true, but not. But you don't want to pacify them for the sake of like validating that their case is real. It's more about like get the fuck out of my face.
I think that the thing with Russia is that they are whatever they are trying to put out, whatever they're trying to say, they're not even hoping for foreigners to believe them. What they need is their own people to believe them, and this is also the reason why the quality of production for their staged videos or
Oh shit.
yeah, it's so bad, and it's so easy to find the truth. Like They did where was it? So they did two videos from Kharkiv and from Kherson. I'm not sure where they filmed it, but they were like two distinct characters. A woman, I think in a red coat, and a baby in a winter like onesie. And it's so obvious. It's the same lady, it's the same baby, but it was from two different like locations. And everybody with like two cells on their brain would like know, like it's very easy to compare.
Yeah.
But they don't care that you can see the difference or I can see the difference. As long as people like my dad, who is still, by the way, in Russia and supports Russia, as long as those people can believe that and will keep voting for Putin.
But like a weird part of it also that, you know, there isn't any like proper excuse for it except for like the whole
There is no excuse, period.
the whole Russian excuse of like, oh, it's everybody against Russia. Like the fact that they still need to censor everything. As much as they say like we're telling the truth,
But you can't access Facebook, you can't access
yeah,
Twitter.
you can't use any of these things because they're proving that our narratives are false. And it's not just the US, it's like every country in the world is able to verify that the Russian narrative is a lie.
Well, this is the
And
thing.
this is why they're also like disconnecting and attacking internet towers, cell towers, because they can't let people still see the truth.
Yeah, yeah. But you are speaking from the point of view of an American person that kind of had access to information. Russia and when they still were USSR, they were cultivating this idea that the entire world is against us. And so, yes, you won't have enough money, enough groceries, enough commodities because we are in this difficult fight of it's us against the world. And they just continue in that. And people, I mean, they have a history of
But the whole thing with like information, just because, so like, you know, people in Russia, people in like Ukraine, also don't really pay for a lot of like software. They just kind of download it. And
they're moving to. That's why Steam is in Ukraine. I mean, so there is progress on that.
at least in Ukraine.
I think in Russia as well.
But like, you know, people can access information. And it's just, you know, whether or not you want people to know that you have access to that information it's the difference between being arrested and not. For showing that like, oh, this is clearly what's going on.
You also need to be open for this information. You can technically access it, but then you read that, like, for example, Russia is bombing Ukraine, and you're like, oh no, but who is it? New York Times. I think they're biased.
News.
I think they're biased. Yeah. So I mean, technically, yeah, but what percentage of those who technically can access information are also like mentally open?
But this is like the big difference between like Western and Eastern like battle of ideology. And in like the West with like the idea is you shout down the bad ideas, you don't censor it. The entire idea is like, because everybody's free to speak, you know, people who are wrong are free to say that they're free to say the wrong shit, because the people that are correct aren't like just trying to censor it. They're proving that it's wrong, and they're able to demonstrate why it's wrong. They're still free to believe bullshit, but you know, they are just not going to be popular because the science doesn't work, because the facts don't match up with reality.
How about
But in Russia,
anti-vaxxers?
see, but that's why it exists, but it's not like the majority thought. But like, you know, this is kind of the problem with it. The fact that there are enough people that are like trying to muddy the waters makes it harder for everybody to just like, you know, collectively make the right decision. In Russia, and in China also, like when you make well, the state decides who is right, and then blocks anything that is not part of their ideology, and they put you in prison for it, or they'll you know, you're not allowed to have your independent journal. You're not allowed to say specific words. That's actual political correctness.
Yeah, but then there is this like in between where people would say, I'm against the war, but both sides are wrong. There's propaganda on both sides. It's really unclear what to believe. And this is like where it's like, I would say like victim blaming. Like if you got robbed on the street because you had the latest iPhone, you could choose, well, let's look at both sides. Maybe the person who robbed you really needed money. Maybe they were out of groceries and needed to buy milk for their baby, you know, like
By
or
stealing your iPhone.
or you can just make it clear. Well, he stole my iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
Russia attacked us. There is
Yeah,
no like two sides.
I
There
had
is
this
no like
I had
they
this like
clearly
whole
attacked us.
I had this whole analogy in my head for like all last week. It's like uh there's like Russia on one side and then there's like the entire international community on the other side. Russia, like there's a knife in Ukraine. From Russia's side, they're like, oh no, this is just the handle of the knife, and the other side is like, no, this is the knife, and we can see you back there. And then Ukraine's just like stabbed with a knife, being like, guys, it's not about who sees what. This is what's happening. This guy stabbed me.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think we'll beat them. I mean, at a cost.
Yeah, so right now, there's still a lot of there's a good amount of energy, but the adrenaline has definitely died down a bit, especially on like the international front. There are a lot of people in Poland who are still offering like huge amounts of support. There are shuttling services. There are people like daily that are just running supplies. They're running helmets and vests. They're running refugees, just getting them across the border and then coming back to Lviv, driving more people back. International aid is still there, but like NATO really kind of like NATO and the UN, they've definitely kind of like blew their load with just drop all the sanctions, and then now we're just gonna wait, and we're gonna keep wagging our finger for the next 3 weeks, but we've already issued all the sanctions and we've seized a lot of your property, and then we just gotta wait for the money that you have there to exhaust. And this is like, I don't know how much of the international strategy was to just kind of like wait out Russia, because the plan was clearly to be a blitzkrieg.
But it's a blitzkrieg. Sorry, it's not my joke.
I'm gonna leave that in.
It's not my joke. It's somebody on Twitter, so don't credit me.
But so like, because they've kind of like forced Russia to now be, or no, so Ukraine has held Russia off long enough that Ukraine's idea was that like NATO was going to intervene and offer the support that Ukraine needs to make a decisive victory soon. But the international community is still just, no, we're not going to do that. We understand that was your strategy, but we don't want to get into a larger conflict. And Russia's entire strategy was, we're going to rush you and we're going to take over your capital and we're going to replace your leader, and everything will be done. And so now both Ukraine and Russia are on the back foot of like, we have to switch to a long drawn out conflict, and like the information war, like it definitely shifts a lot, because you can dunk for a full week on like the Russian invasion, idiot soldiers for as much as you want, but you get tired.
Then you start getting news that your friend died. Then you start getting news that the apartment of your hairdresser was bombed or something, and
that actually happened.
And it kind of becomes more personal, and making jokes on Twitter gets more complicated.
And the emotional weight is no longer just having fun.
But here is a very important thing that is happening right now, and it happened in Ukraine back in 2014 as well. It's an insane energy of community where people just help, like you really can't afford to be not into politics, or I don't know much about the conflict. Like, you're gonna learn very fast when you hear like,
there are now stakes
missiles,
to your indecision.
And so this is also like this is like a crucial moment for a nation building process, because if Ukraine before, so even in 2014 when Russia clearly annexed Crimea, Russia clearly like started
illegally annexed Crimea.
Yeah, so clearly like started war in the east. There were some people who were like on the fence, like, but like now when things are so open and so clear, people in Kharkiv, I watched like this poll, I don't know if it's a poll, a survey, but they can, like, the journalists were like just asking people on the street, what do you think about the war? Because things were getting tense for a couple of weeks before that. And I think 70% like, no, I don't believe that.
Russia would never do that.
Yeah,
to us.
your brother nations, like
Odessa? Oh,
my parents live in Russia. What? No, No.
Russians always come to
Now,
Odessa.
Kharkiv and Odessa, two most Russian-speaking and pro-Russian cities in Ukraine, forget about it. Like, Russia did... So, this is what we say here, and you can put in, like, the best thing Putin could do to Ukraine is actually attack it. Because...
Just destroying the illusions of, like,
because of the Soviet past, so many people are still kind of like, but we want the greatness of Russia. We want a piece of this greatness, of this, like, no, we don't want anything to do with you. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, and so, like, one of the more disgusting things also, so, like, right now, I think it was either today or yesterday, there was the third rounds of peace talks. And part of that negotiation, which Ukraine refused, was that, oh, it's going to be a green corridor. And Russia, we promise we won't shoot this green corridor this time, you know. But, like, the stipulation is, oh, the refugees, they have to come into Belarus or into Russia. Why on earth would Ukraine, like, send their civilians?
I think they needed it for their own picture, to say...
Of course.
To say people like my dad...
we're extending our hand. This is for aid. This isn't an invasion. We're liberating them from the Nazis.
This is like, at some point, they started giving out passports to people in Donetsk and Lugansk. And, like, I don't know, imagine, like, in the US that... I don't know, Mexico starts giving out passports to people in Texas and, like, proclaiming them Mexican citizens. Like, it would raise some, like, red flags. But it was sold to people in Russia as, like, you see, Ukraine abandoned them. Ukraine is bombing them. Russia is trying to make them, like, welcomed and stuff. But at the same time, I was like, have nothing to do with this conflict. It's Ukrainians' problem only. So I think... I don't know if they would actually proceed with evacuation to Russia or Belarus, but they would definitely use it.
I was actually thinking one of the interesting things, like, what if Ukraine said yes and then just, like, nobody wanted to go? I mean, Russia would naturally go, like, oh, the Ukrainians are making it impossible. Like, you lose your citizenship. Or we're gonna kill you and put you in prison, because, like, that's one of the big parts of their narrative, that Ukraine is holding its civilians hostage. Oh yeah, that's why 1.5 million refugees are now crossing into all the other countries in Europe, because, like, oh yeah, Ukraine is, maybe everybody else is a Nazi too, you know. All those guys in Germany, maybe they brought it back. Maybe it's not illegal anymore.
There was this, like, photo that it probably made. I'm sure you've seen it already. It made rounds. Like, it's exactly from Irpin, actually, where, like, the bridge collapsed and people are, like, trying to cross the river, and so they are under this bridge, and Russia is, like, selling this picture to their own citizens, like, oh look, Ukraine blew up the bridge, so people wouldn't be able to escape. And like, yeah, that's why there is, like, Ukrainian military in the photo trying to help people cross, like, exactly for that reason. But in my hometown, so first of all, they managed to destroy mobile connection towers, or mobile, I don't know how you call them.
And it's for, like, more or less the entire Zaporizhia region, or is
it it's a big part of south of Ukraine. So I have no connection with my grandma. I have no idea if she's still alive. Haha. And, like, supposedly things are quiet there. This is just, like, part of the group that is kind of went astray, because the bigger group was eventually destroyed by Ukrainian army, and so they just went to my hometown because they were hungry. They wanted to wipe their butts with toilet paper and not, like, leaves in the in the field or
their
something.
ratty uniforms.
Yeah, but they're, like, now. So they also think that, like, destroying TV towers, it's the big thing, because apparently in Russia people are so dependent on TV.
like 70% of their media is consumed on TV still.
Yeah, and so they try to blow up towers or disconnect or sabotage TV towers in multiple cities in Ukraine just for that, because, like, oh, once we, like, destroyed TV towers, like, we can do whatever we want with these people. But
yeah, and, like, one of the things, I don't remember the dates on it, but, like, you were showing me a lot of them. It was just, like, Russians are bringing into cities that they've occupied aid, and then people, like, with Russian flags saying, like, thank you for saving us from the Ukrainian Nazis. And
they brought the aid to Kherson, and you gotta note here that Kherson is a city that was, like, under siege.
It was under siege for
I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
Siege.
So there are, like, huge problems with bringing in anything from the outside. So
they're essentially blockaded for
which is, again, this is also, like,
human rights violation.
And so people were just, like, shot randomly on the streets. So there's a lot of terror going on in Kherson. And not only people who are like ballsy enough to go on demonstrations and rallies with Ukrainian flags and like, hey, get the fuck out of here, this is Ukraine, but also for the aid that they brought, which is, it wasn't like aid, it was technically aid,
it was like food and stuff.
yeah,
That's, like,
so it wasn't like poisoned, but like, you know, if you didn't blockade the city, you wouldn't have to bring the aid on the other hand. So
Yeah.
like, it's just, but people didn't grab it. I mean, maybe like a couple, but they just had
I
another
saw
rally
a video
around this.
from our dance teacher in our hometown. I think it was right before the cell towers, or before
Yeah.
the communication was cut. But it was like people in line to get the aid, and then like the other people kind of like shouting them like, "You guys are betraying your country. You guys are like."
Even my G2, which is my paternal grandmother, my granddad, he's a huge fan of USSR and Vladimir Putin and Russia. He lives in Russia.
And father lives in Russia. So
Yeah,
her father's mom.
Yeah, and my dad's mom, she was very vocal about wanting to move to Russia. So, I mean, I expected her to be the first one to kind of like start, you know, making crepes for the soldiers because, oh, poor boys, you must be so tired. I thought she would be like receiving them like with open hands, but even she said that like, oh, this is like humiliating. So maybe there is hope. I don't know.
Hey, I mean, that's one less ultra awkward conversation that you have to have next time you guys see each other at some point.
This is the good side of not having communication with my hometown and I have to talk to her.
Okay, we're recording.
I mean, my secrets are out there.
Yeah, so like I remember another part of the peace talks. I think I noted it. Like it's still there. There was some mention of like Kyiv recognizing like, oh yeah, maybe we will just decide to remain a neutral country and decide
hope
against our.
not.
Yeah, so this is
not.
the problem. This is one of the big problems that I've been noticing. I'm talking about Kate. You've been noticing it too, but like. Zelensky, a lot of his addresses are strictly like complaining and whining to NATO about like, why won't you let us in?
Sorry, I mean, it's just...
This is one of the things where you mentioned like there is a unity, but unfortunately right now, like straying too far away from that, if we're going into criticizing the problems with Zelensky's presidency and his leadership during the war right now, like we would be distracting from what is the priority, which is getting Russia out. Not necessarily, we can't at this point. It's really too hopeful to think of like, you know, after the war, what's going to happen with the president, or is Zelensky going to be elected president and he deserves it again? Even if we think that he's doing a horrible job and that, you know, Ukraine should go towards NATO and towards like the rest of the European partners, like unfortunately talking about that is really like not in the best interest right now of like Ukraine's success.
So on the one hand, yes. On the other hand, I think politically they do need to at least pressure NATO into, because like, you know, like
Yes,
you
there
ask for
does need to
this
be pressure.
much, you always get this much. So they're asking close the sky, and it says, you know what, we want, but we'll give you 20 planes. And this is like, so you need to be pressuring. Do you need to be like openly blaming? Like I think in one of
Where
his latest...
every single one of his videos is just him complaining at NATO and like just trying to guilt trip.
Yeah, I think in one of his latest speech he was, if you don't help us, it means you support the killing, which is like, no, that's not, because again, there are things that NATO can say,
he said like,
things that, because they do a shit ton, they offer a shit ton of help, they can't close the sky, and for various reasons. I'm not an expert to be giving you exact why they can't, but at the same time they share their intelligence like 24/7, like in real time. They're like, okay, there's plane there, like rocket there, so like they are offering the support that they can offer. And at the same time, NATO and EU were given clear recommendations of what Ukraine needs to do
since you like
to
8 years ago.
become part of NATO and part of EU. And this current administration, I'm not going to say they were openly sabotaging that. I might be thinking that, but I'm not going to say that.
Again,
but
recording.
but like they were not, like the previous administration, I saw more like direct steps towards that.
Actual like
this administration is like taking like not steps back, but like taking things slow. And so now when you were being so on the fence about NATO for 2 years or 3 years now, And now you're gonna say, hey, why aren't you like doing a no-fly zone? Why aren't you like
Why aren't we immediately in NATO?
why aren't you participating in the war for us? Why do you not fight in our war? Which I don't think they have to. So honestly, I don't have problems.
But he like this.
NATO, please keep helping Ukraine. I don't have problems.
One of the problems that like I've definitely seen in one of his videos is like maybe Ukraine doesn't need NATO. Maybe NATO needs Ukraine. And like
It's a nice line for motivation, because now Ukraine kind of feels like there are so many jokes of like, after this war is done, we're going to receive applications to be part of Ukraine from NATO. And like for being like, yeah, we can do it. It's a very good line. But yeah, on the long run, it's a little bit like,
it's so incredibly short-sighted and like such like bad politics.
I don't know. I think I'll give my evaluation of it after the war, because right now he's doing a great job of keeping everybody like, we're gonna win this war. We're gonna do it.
You need to take a shower.
Well, on the other hand, without the shower, people kind of see like, oh, he has sleepless nights. Yeah, he's like, and so like they all changed into military clothing. Like,
and he's still like he also still like can deliver a joke and kind of and he can dunk on Putin with like, oh look, my hand can actually touch the microphone.
Yeah, so I think I'm fine with. I don't like him as a politician, but right now in the war, I'm happy with how he could have done much worse.
Yes.
Let's face it.
Unfortunately, he is the weak link, and he just needs to cross the low bars. And so far, he's crossing the low bars.
Yeah, so he's been a good like.
Yeah. Other things addressing COVID.
Still here.
this needs to fucking be talked about. And I haven't seen it in any news coverage that I've been seeing regarding the war. 1.5 million people have crossed over the borders and are going to different European countries. Before the war started, a new strain of Omicron was detected in Kyiv and Lviv, I think. People were cramped in trains. People are cramped in buses. People are stuck at the borders. People aren't wearing. I don't know how many pictures you've been seeing, but in almost none of them does anybody wear a mask. A lot of people were still unvaccinated before the war started. Lviv and Kyiv were red zones.
No, we were orange zones.
Not great.
It's not red. You can go into the restaurants.
One of my friends from Kharkiv, who just recently came to Kyiv, like she's quarantining herself because she believes she has COVID again right now. We had COVID a few weeks ago. COVID's a real thing. I firmly believe that depending on whether or not Russia performs like a fucking Holocaust, but there are going to be more deaths from COVID than the war.
No, I don't believe that, because
in the past year there were like 800,000 deaths from COVID in the U.S. alone.
I don't know how many deaths from COVID were in Ukraine past year, but in 10 days, 12, we're like at least 2,000 of.
But I'm not even saying just Ukrainians though. I think the number at least confirmed and verified by United Nations Commission for Human Rights, 1,000 something casualties, 360 killed, 750 injured. This is an extreme lowball, I imagine, but like
because numbers also add up every day. I mean, as you can imagine.
Yeah, and like there's also so much that you just cannot verify right now. But going to other countries like
so the Omicron, as far as I get it, Omicron now is more treatable at home because I'm gonna say something very stupid in medical terms right now, but like it doesn't cause you pneumonia necessarily. It kind of like it doesn't go deeper. Oh my god, I'm embarrassing myself. So hopefully, at least like these people won't need hospitalization. And if they do need hospitalization, the countries where they went, they also have like pretty high rate of vaccination, and they would have the medical resources.
But the issue of it spreading so widely is the speed of evolution of the.
I know, but there is another problem that we are facing.
I know exactly. This is why it's not being talked about. But unfortunately, this I still think needs to be addressed, at least with like people dealing with like the refugee crisis abroad. I don't know how much it's going to like necessarily affect Russia. Russia's already done an absolute shit job in dealing with COVID. I don't know when they actually recognized COVID exists. but it was maybe 3 years after it was declared, and so that's I think
No,
that's,
not that bad.
it was super bad. Putin does he still refuse to take Sputnik, their vaccine?
I have no idea if he vaccinated, but the fact that he stays in bunker and he literally makes people do tests of their poop, in order to be like let close. And when we say close, it means like 30
On the
meters
other side of the
table.
table, yeah.
It's not like this close. So he's pretty paranoid.
But in terms of otherwise how the war seems to be going, like people are getting tired. Casualties are still coming up. We're not being informed about the Ukrainian casualties, but in terms of Russian casualties, they've accounted for, like, up to this day, I believe the most recent numbers report from the General Staff of the Ministry of Defense: 11,000 people, 290 tanks, bunch of aircrafts and shit that the Russians are abandoning. A couple tanks that were confiscated via tractor. Well, actually, the 11,000. That's from the report. The tractors are all from the memes, and they're pretty hilarious if you've never seen them.
Which, again, I don't know how war would. I hope you never have to face war in your countries, our dear viewers, wherever you're from. But this is something that, like, we might. I want the world to know about the war in Ukraine. That you can't really say, like, oh, it's the politicians who started the wars. We are just like innocent people. No, in this war, we all fight. Like, people in the war zone, even if you're a farmer and you can't really throw your shovel too far to hit a tank, for example, you get in your tractor and you go and steal somebody else's tank and bring it to your forces and say, hey guys, I got a tank for you. And there are two more. It's actual video, like it's actual video footage. Like there are two more. We're going back and gonna bring them here.
There are multiple videos of people stealing tanks with tractors, and it's hilarious.
Just because, like, they came to our home. You really, you have nowhere to run. Like, yeah, you can go to Poland. Poland, like, offers you 3 years. You can stay there for 3 years and work there for 3 years. No limitations. That's cool. What after the 3 years? So this is the problem. Like, people in Ukraine, it's not about being heroic. It's not about, we are real Ukrainians. It's very simple. They came to our home. Like, you can't run forever, because then you go to Poland and next thing Russia decides is to attack Poland, because Poland was also like part of this like satellite for USSR. And what, you run from Poland to Germany, and then Russia says, you know what, now we're gonna retake Germany because we still hold the grudge for Second World War, and you run where? So I think this is a very important thing to learn, I think, from this war, that you can be a pacifist, you can be against violence, you can be against war, but then the
stakes are higher for being indecisive, unfortunately. What else? We're hosting a couple people at our apartment. We're still relatively safe in Lviv. Yesterday, despite my goading of the universe, there were no air raid sirens, which was interesting.
Shut up.
Yep. But every other day before that, there was at least one, if not two, air raid sirens. We're like the guys who are staying with us, they informed us, like, if there's like a ballistic missile, like we're able to detect it directionally, but not necessarily speed and like where its target is supposed to be. So there is like the tangential us receiving the air raid warning. So that's why we might be getting them, even though we're not getting bombed. But it is still like a pretty ever looming threat that, like, they might try to move to Lviv.
And this is also a problem. Like, when you get I think what we got in total, 30 sirens by now, 30 like air raids, some of them at 2 a.m. And like, you go out, you hide, nothing happens. You hide, nothing happens. You hide, nothing happens. And then like people said, like, nothing's gonna happen. And then when something happens, nobody's prepared. And
this the boy who cried air raid siren.
Yeah, so if you hear sirens, just hide. Just don't go crazy. You don't need to go into your bunker 30 meters below the ground, but like just be in a safe space. And a safe space, apparently, now I'm gonna tell you a very fun fact, that new recommendations, before we were encouraged to go into the basements because we don't have any other bomb shelters. Like, USSR was a bit like, crazy about potential war because, obviously, we don't have enough bomb shelters. And so the only shelter we have is basements. Basements that have no ventilation, have no running water. We have a bunch of pipes that can break and either burn us because there is hot water, or we're just gonna drown in feces because there's also sewage pipes and stuff. But there's no, like, I mean, it's not looking safe to be there. And so now the new rules are just the rule of 2 walls. It needs to be 2 solid walls for one wall to be
with no windows.
so yeah, so windows don't count, and glass doors like you see behind us don't count either. Better if it's still like 2 solid walls, like one wall to be like crushed by the missile, and the second wall to receive all of the shrapnel. I don't know what you call it, like
Debris.
the debris. Yeah.
No, I think shrapnel technically, if it is being blown and is a projectile.
Well, I suck at this.
I think debris is what's falling.
But essentially, yeah. So we are on the top floor. So we go essentially on the 7th floor.
Don't point too much to where our location is in case we get bombed.
We live on the top floor, so we take our dog. We go on the 2 floors down because we also need to try to count like 2 walls up, and we hide in a little nook behind the elevator shaft because like we want to have like.
But it's
2
also
walls
still
around
not the
us.
safest, just because it is like a floor above like a staircase.
Well, this is the safest we were
Without
able
having
to
to
file.
escape constantly.
Not just even
No,
if
not
we
escape
were
constantly,
willing
but
to, we don't have where to escape to be safe.
Yeah, but like the elevator just never a smart thing to take during like one of these during like an air raid. But yeah, like people are dying. We're not Nazis.
My president is Jewish.
Um
Oh, there was this hilarious like exchange I sent you yesterday that the embassy of Russia commented something in South Africa, like on their
Oh, yeah.
Twitter, that like, oh, we've been receiving so much support, so many letters, thank you so much, la la la. And actually, the embassy of Germany commented on that tweet saying,
we
like,
unfortunately are very familiar with what Nazis
yeah,
are,
and
they
what
are
you
not
are doing is not that. So-
Ukraine is not Nazis.
Thank you, Germany. You're awesome.
Yeah, I'm still. It's just kind of weird to me that like South Africa wasn't the first one to jump out at that. But I mean, it was a Twitter picture. It was a picture of a thread.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there was some sort of response.
And again, when you say thank you for so much support, it does not mean that you actually received a lot of support. You can just say that, and nobody's gonna check how many letters you received.
When the UN met last week, there was, I think, there were a total of 130. It was either 130 or 140 nations that voted to condemn Russia's actions.
And Russia was one that said no.
Okay, so 30 abstained. I don't remember which ones all of them were, but the ones that voted in favor of Russia was Russia, Belarus, Syria, North Korea, and Tbilisi?
Eritrea.
Tbilisi
is the capital of Germany. Oh my God, Georgia.
Of Georgia, yeah, sorry. So Eritrea, and I don't know anything about that government, but it says a lot that they're.
And people were so like, what the fuck is Eritrea? That like actually people from Eritrea had like commented on Twitter, hey, we exist, we are a country, because people were kind of like, it's really not nice to be like so.
Yeah.
What, ignorant?
Hey, before the war in Ukraine, people didn't fucking know where Ukraine was.
Yeah, but at least
I still doubt that the majority of people know where Ukraine is.
At least when you say I'm from Eritrea, it's like, what is it? Is it an elf kingdom? Is it like what is it? When you say Ukraine, it doesn't even sound like an elf kingdom.
When you say the Isle of Man, you just imagine like, you know.
Yeah. So
bush. That's all you imagine. Any last thoughts?
Keep supporting Ukraine, keep donating to Come Back Alive Fund. They are awesome. I actually listen to their talks every night or recordings the next day, and
it rocks us to panicked sleep.
Yeah, they do a great job, and they pick up where the government is too slow and too like
rigid.
Yeah, to move fast. That's where they pick up, and they do it like that. So keep sending money, please. You don't have to pray for us. That's fine, but keep sending your money.
Yeah. Right now, Ukraine doesn't need prayers. It needs like a money, and then also like a closed airspace.
Yeah. We also need to keep our economy moving. So if you want to buy, if you still
buy
see
Ukrainian, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, not buy Ukraine. Buy Ukrainian products.
Yeah, so if you still see any stores that operate in Ukraine open, that they deliver, buy from them. Or if you trust them enough, buy from them now so they would send it to you like when the war is over. It's not gonna last too long, believe me. We're gonna crush them much faster.
I
But
still.
like,
Sorry, go on, finish.
yeah. So if you are in Ukraine, don't feel like shit when you go out and buy coffees because, oh, it's war, I'm not supposed to be buying coffees. You're supposed to be buying coffees. We need the economy moving. We need people to keep paying taxes. We need people to stay employed and stuff. So
And also, I'd still say one of like the most effective things in terms of like actually ending the war is like keep hounding like the Russian firewall. Like make sure people in Russia know what's going on.
oh, they know it's honestly at this point.
I mean, there are several thousand people put in prison, but like that support base needs to be dismantled.
If anything, support Russian political prisoners because I don't like Russia. I don't like Russians in this context. But if there's a little sparkle of hope when people resist, also there.
Yeah, there is very much a lot of like this vitriol right now towards Russians just in like, around the world. And while I'm sure that there are some of them who definitely deserve it, like the whole a good Russian is a dead Russian, like, don't stand for what like the Russian government is doing. That's not excusable. I mean,
I think Russia needs to be held accountable. Russian people need to be held accountable because for a second they were enjoying this idea of Russian greatness because Russia was doing this like small victorious wars throughout the history of Putin's rule, and people felt when all you get is like we won again, yeah, we beat Georgians, yeah.
one of Putin's peaks was also like after the annexation of Crimea.
Yeah, and you don't get any repercussions for that. Or you get sanctions that are like, what? I'm not gonna eat I'm gonna be eating French cheese anymore? That's fine, you know? You still have this right to be enjoying the greatness of, oh, my country is so strong, my army is so powerful. But now look at the map of Russia, look at the size of Russia, look at the size of Ukraine, and we are fucking them up.
Like everybody
very, very nicely. And so I think Russia needs to be held accountable. People need to be held accountable. But this blind hate, I don't. It's a popular opinion in Ukraine, but I don't think that. I think blind hate will only make people surround Putin more and support him more because that's going to be a proof. Yeah, West hates us. Putin was right all this time. The West hates us. So I think
blindness just kind of like leads you to find the thing that like makes you feel most secure. And, like in a lot of cases, it's a fucking dictator.
So Russians will have eventually to either do something with Putin because unfortunately you voted for him. Unfortunately you
voted.
I mean, unfortunately you are responsible for your own president. Like we can't be responsible for your president. NATO is not responsible for your president. You are responsible for your president. Me as a Ukrainian, I will offer all moral and potentially financial support after this war because now I support the war for those who actually want to fight for good in Russia. But at this point, you can't really just be, I'm not into politics. I really know nothing about politics. Sorry. But I think Putin is awesome, by the way. You know, you can't do that anymore and not be held accountable. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was much longer than 5 minutes, I think.
Yeah, I think I'll just like put it up like this. This is interesting.
Okay.
Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава, and thank you for being here.